go through the way people are lined up on my screen. And if you just tell us, yeah, who you are and where you're coming in from. Ian, you first.
Thanks, Sanja. Good to see everybody. So, Ian O'Keefe, I am physically located in McLean, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., and it's like to be here.
Dan.
I am Dan Riley, not dressed up in red all the way, and I'm pretty disappointed about that. But my everyone else looks amazing. I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the cold. So happy to be here. Thank you, Sanja, and everybody for organizing all this. Can't wait.
Yeah, no, and thank you. And yeah, it's I wasn't ready for the dress up either, but I would have to say Ian was the first one who joined our behind the scenes, and I was like, oh wow, I want his outfit. So I literally ran around my apartment trying to think like, what do I have? What do I have? It was very impromptu, but yeah, next time we'll plan a little more ahead. For any of you as you're joining, if you want to pop in where you're dialing in from or anything fun about yourself, please feel free to join the party. Richard, on to you next.
Happy holidays, everybody. This is Richard from One Model, and I am located about an hour north of Pittsburgh, up in the woods of Pennsylvania. It's cold here, and I'm looking forward to warmer spirits with this call today.
Thank you for joining us. And Enrique, you and I were chatting earlier this week. Was it last? You were in Europe, but are you back home now? Where are you
I am
calling in
back
from?
back home, back to reality. I am Enrique Rubio. Thank you, Sanja, for inviting me, and good to connect with all these wonderful colleagues that we're all part of the same community and the same space, right? I am dialing in from Arizona, from Flagstaff, Arizona. It's not Phoenix. It's not hot here. It's actually pretty cold. We are high up in the mountains, 7,000 feet. That's the elevation just in the city level. So beautiful place, beautiful day. So excited to be part of this conversation. Thank you for the invite, Tanya.
Thank you for joining us. Mine, on to you next.
I'm a latecomer. I'm so sorry. I got stuck in traffic, Istanbul traffic.
Great.
I am Mine. I'm based in Istanbul, Turkey. I think I'm the latest. 8 p.m. It's 8 p.m. here. It's almost the end of my day, but very happy to see everyone with the holiday spirit. I was like in two different events today, so have a bit of that holiday spirit, and I asked for some glasses for the party mood.
Oh, look at that.
Just on time. They arrived just on time, and super happy to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. And Al, I think you might be the earliest. You might be one starting your day.
Yeah, start my day here in Santa Cruz, California. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Sanja and crew, and happy holidays. This is in Santa Cruz to give you a very shaka, to start the call. So yeah, excited to talk and share and listen and learn. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining. And I'm Sanja Licina. I'll be your host for the day, asking all the different questions. And I am in sunny, gorgeous Buenos Aires. And for us, it's almost holiday season. And after being here for almost 10 years, it is really wild to me that New Year's and holiday time is hot. But I'm almost used to it, almost. Not complaining, just saying it'll shift from having lived on the northern hemisphere for the majority of my life. So as I mentioned, we have a ton of questions. For any of you who already submitted your questions before, thank you so much. And for any of you that might have some burning questions as we go through our existing list, please feel free to pop it in the chat. I'll do my best to get to them. And if I can't, we'll see if our esteemed fireside chatties can also answer it after our time together. So we'll kick it off with you, Richard. And the first question being, what are some key things you'd like to do going into the new year to enhance employee experience?
I'm honored to kick this off. I'll say it's just AI. Just AI your way through everything. That's it. End question. I think that's no. I'm kidding.
Where are you
No,
Shut it
I love
down.
this one.
See you next year.
Mic drop.
No, I love this one. I think that all of the changes that have been going on across HR, and this has been a year of change, past 5 years of change, it feels like within the kind of HR function. One of the things I think about a lot is we have historically been very verticalized. We're recruiting, we're comp, we're talent, we're this. And that's really where we've run in the past. We've been doing a lot of research over at One Model around the sort of horizontal approach. So how do we look at kind of the things that we did across all of those things like strategy, tech, ops, data, analytics, these real horizontals? My dream for 2025 for HR is let's flip that. Let's get to be a little bit more horizontally driven, a little less vertically driven, because the employee experience is a horizontal. It's employees don't experience comp and talent and recruiting. They experience work, and work is very systematic and very system oriented. So that's what I'm looking at for 2025 is how do we start thinking a little bit differently in this space, and how do we maybe flip things on their side heading into 2025 with all these challenges coming our way.
Well, I love that. So it's almost like we've had a lot of times these like specializations, but we lost a little bit of that generalization or the big picture. Like we got
Yeah.
really good at the details. So it's almost like when you think of your health, you look at like exercise, like things in isolation, but how are they working together and are they complementing each other in the right
Totally.
way?
Oh, it's a great
All
metaphor for it.
right. I love that. I think we'll keep an eye out, and that would be a great one because I have follow-up questions for you. I'm not going to ask because we have too many already. But just from a sense of like operationalizing or what would be a first
Oh,
step.
yeah.
So I think that's a really great conversation for 2025 to start to think about what organizations are doing that well already. What are some learnings? So we'll definitely jot that one down as a follow-up. Maybe a webinar, maybe a podcast. Let's see.
I love it.
We'll play around with it. So a lot of questions. I know you did the mic drop with AI, and I know you long enough that I was like, I know he's kidding. I know everybody knows he's kidding. But we do get a ton of questions around AI, and I think that's been a super ongoing conversation. And I feel like a lot of research around that even this year has changed. It's like AI is going to do much. Everybody's doing something with AI. AI didn't work as much. No, we need to do this. And so it's been, I feel like, a lot of experimenting, a lot of exploration, a lot of different expectations, which is good. I think that's how we should be approaching something that's pretty new. So, my next question is, what role do you foresee AI playing in HR functions in 2025? And Mine will kick that one off with you.
So yes, I mean, we keep hearing about AI. Everything is about AI. Today I was at a startup event. Everything, including machinery or like, everything, they put AI to some part of it to make it like trending. So if I were to comment on that, yes, AI is going to help us, but to balance the human skills with technology. So it's going to one, act as a proactive measure to detect if there's any like alarming things in the company about culture, about burnout, so that it's going to help HR and also the managers to just get those signals before that it becomes a problem, before the employee decides to leave the company. So I think AI is going to help us a lot in that sense to be more strategic with our both people and culture strategies. And two, it's going to remove all the mundane tasks that are like, really redundant, so that people are going to spend more quality time or even like more time with other things other than work. We will have more productive time and spend that time with our loved ones, with flexible work structures. So I think that's where AI is going to help us. Because like when we are talking about AI, everyone's asking for tools, but it's not about the tools. It's about like how you can put it into good use and how you can make a better life for your employees. So we will see more of those taking place because now it was like the big shiny and trending thing, so everyone was like trying new things. Now I think it's going to stabilize and come to an understanding that this is here to help us to make our lives better.
Yeah. Thank you, Mina. Al, what would you add to Mina's very observant and well thought out?
And two quick things, and I'll comment on Richard's insight as well. So if you know me at all, I'm a very positive person by nature, but I am really concerned. Yeah, do I have hope? But I have a lot of concern because there's a host of leaders who are making assumptions around the productivity gains of AI that Mina just referred to, yet they're not being realized. So that capacity that's being created is being filled by other work. And there's some assumptions that, okay, AI is going to be 50% more productive at this job family level, when in fact it might not be at that level yet. So now you have people working a job and a half, 2 jobs when they're already busy. So I think we're kind of overshooting in some cases, and I think we're underestimating the impact on actual work. So I'm concerned about how people are going to make a living in the future. And so where I'll come back to this, and it goes to what Richard said. Yeah, integrated talent management has been talked about for the past 20 years, but we are at this stage where there's so much overlap on processes and tech and data and insight that we need new management models and governance structures to process this information at a heightened level of frequency than historical norms dictate. So that's going to take innovation, and I think we're too slow from a people process technology standpoint. And the final thing I'll say, great space for others to comment on this, is at the human level. And I love Yuval Noah Harari's book, Nexus, and he shines a light on, we got so much information coming at us. And the insight that is truly meaningful and represents the truth is expensive. In other words, it takes time and effort to generate. And yes, AI can surface that, but information that's cheap is very easy to produce, and that's still hitting decision makers at all levels of the organization, down to the individual. So how do we carve out time and create awareness that if I want to make the best decision possible on behalf of the organization, on behalf of my team, I'm going to actually have to sit with the complexity and truly seek to understand, as opposed to just take the bright light or, okay, so-and-so did that, therefore I'm going to do that. So again, I'm hopeful, but I am very concerned at what we're stepping into and the lack of systematic approaches that are being taken.
Thank you all. All
Happy
good
holidays.
points. Even from an optimist, it's good to, it's good to stay real. Everything's got its place. Ian, will you round us out on this question? What role do you foresee AI playing in HR?
Yeah, I'll kind of pull on a little bit of what everyone said so far. To Al's point, I think we are going to see more and more of a need and an implementation of humans in the loop. But when there is an AI prototype or a pilot, there needs to be kind of checks and balances, and also contextualization and subject matter expertise that isn't present in the data, that is present in humans who have spent years and decades in that space. So I think it's going to be continued to be a booster and not a replacement overall. But to the extent that Gen AI, for instance, does take some of the drudgery, as I think we've heard Don Klinghoffer call it, the drudgery out of certain operational tasks, I think it does create some space to create room for more creativity, to the extent that that doesn't get backfilled with stuff that's just in the backlog. So the management prioritization of that's going to be important. And then I guess overall, I'd say too, I predict we're going to continue to see vertical applications of Gen AI in talent acquisition job descriptions, in engagement survey compilation, in HR help desk. That's going to continue to get experiment with. I predict and am hopeful that there'll be more of a horizontal sort of test and learn with generative AI when it comes to knowledge management, let's call it. I think there's a ton of information that is not digitized, that's in the brains and the minds of a lot of humans who are doing the work, and generative AI can be a way to sort of digitize and then create a non-human teammate for all of the tribal knowledge, shall we say, that is often left in the community ecosystem that you have to sort of learn your way into and grow your way into. It's not going to do that for you, but you can create research assistants, so to speak, that can help you just synthesize and get information faster. So hopefully there's a lot more digitization and experimentation of what we all take for granted, having been in these jobs for so long. There's ways to capture that and create new data and new insight that will help us be more human in how we get work done, but just faster and faster is a balancing act there too. So
Yeah. I love what you're saying. And I don't know if I haven't thought about it as much before, but I think a lot of times when people leave an organization, and one of the things that, we've seen through the years as shorter tenures, one of the most painful things is the knowledge, like the institutional knowledge somebody takes with them and like who's who and how do things work. And so it'll be really interesting if we can use Gen AI or AI to like in some ways replicate that because there is such good energy for new people joining the organization. But is it hard when somebody that's like known everyone and kind of like everything and history of things leaves? Like that's always one of the most difficult things to replace. And no matter how amazing a new person is, they can't come with that. It's just impossible. So that would
yeah.
be a really interesting place to plug it in.
Questions like what's working well, what's not, what are your pain points on process X? You hear someone talk for a minute straight, it's like 5 pages of stuff that you do that times
Yeah.
X number of people. It's, put an AI capability on top of that
Yeah.
and just be smarter about how you're listening and learning. So yeah.
Absolutely. So we started out by talking about AI and its role and impact in 2025, but I'd love to know what are some new trends do you see or expect to be shaping HR in 2025 that are not AI related? And Dan, I'll go to you on that one first.
Well, yes. And so I want to double, triple down on first of all, what everyone said. And one thing it's been interesting to me, which leads to my point, everybody has used the word human and the importance of humans continuing to be in the loop. And I just want to note that, listening to everyone's very insightful thoughts around AI. And I do think, and I share Al's concern, I am also an optimist, as many of you who know me know that I am. I am also a realist, and being an optimist is hard because you have to find the opportunity in sometimes chaos, right? So that's the irony of being an optimist. So as far as trends that I think we're going to see more on the human side, the HR side of things, I see HR, and I've been saying this year after year after year, and I've been hoping for it and wanting it, and it's a big part of what Radical's all about. But I really do see it moving from human resources to more of a human revolution, right? And it is about shedding these big legacy systems. It doesn't mean they go away, but human beings cannot feel like cogs in a machine and cogs in the wheel. And so I think we're going to start to see HR being more of the architect of opportunity for people. Say that again, becoming the architect of opportunity. And this includes really a double down focus on belonging, a double down focus on growth, trust, right? Meaning, connection, building connections in the workplace that aren't just, I know what you do, I know why you're here, but connections but I know what you stand for. I know what you believe in. I know what matters to you. And so I think we're going to see more of that human revolution instead of just resources. So, to me, with that, there's 2 or 3 really fast trends that I think we will see. And I do think, and sorry, I'm gonna say AI again. I think AI has to be thought about as we head into 2025 more as a co-pilot, more as a partner in crime that helps focus on tasks, not jobs, right? What can AI do that we need to do that's repeatable, that isn't necessarily taking jobs? And again, there are cases where it can take jobs, especially more on the content side of things. But to me, it's an opportunity to reduce tasks and allow you and the human beings and the humans to focus on what they're best at and bring their highest value to work. And I do think there's going to be a new social contract that's focused around trust, transparency, meaning, clarity. I see that heading into 2025. And finally, and this is a bigger one, I'll just say it out loud. I think employee activism is going mainstream a little bit more, as happened in 2020. I think we're going to start to see it again in 2025. I don't mean that in a scary way. I mean that in employees expect more. They want more out of their organizations. They want their organizations to stand for something greater, to be a part of something better, something bigger. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. And so HR has to be thinking about that as they head into 2025.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And one of the things as you were, talking about belonging and trust is I thought, gosh, like DIB took such a huge hit this year. And I don't know if all of this year or last year too, everything like time has no meaning anymore. It all blurs together. But the idea that as organizations, it's so important for us to remind ourselves that AI is thought of as like a means to an end, not an end itself. Because I could see a lot of people asking, like, how much are we using AI? What's the AI? Like, AI is that end KPI, not something that we're measuring or thinking about for how does it help us get to our organizational goals. And I think that will still help happen some, but I think we just need to be so like a group like us that has a voice, that we could need to continue to remind people that, or else it's like I could see it. Like you go into an executive meeting and it's like, how many of our employees are using AI and what's it's like AI versus, hey, we've been trying to solve this kind of challenge. Have we used AI to advance? And what are some of the ways we've tried to incorporate AI to increase intention, to increase the feeling of inclusion and belonging, et cetera? So thank you for highlighting that. Al, what about you? Outside of AI, or maybe interwoven a little bit, but what are some trends you're
Well,
thinking will
I'll be
happen
real
next
quick
year?
because I want to get Enrique in here. Yes, and I know
Yeah,
you do here,
he's
but
next.
I'll just say real quick, globalization / outsourcing. So, if I'm as an entrepreneur thinking about how I'm going to get work done, yeah, I'm going to think about what I can do technologically. I'm going to think about who I can hire or partner with. But if I am going to contract to build a website or build media or something, I'm probably going to be on Upwork or some other platform, and I'm going to source that talent from abroad because they're cheaper, they're as potentially a higher quality or same on par, with what's here in the U.S. So that's where I get concerned because this is going to require regulation, it's going to require systematic thinking, and you throw in GDPR in there, which is a bit of a non sequitur, but it does relate to what is going to be feasible from a legal standpoint. So there's a lot going on in terms of what's going to impact the future of work. But Enrique, I know you have a global sense. If I might just kick that question over to you, and sorry, Sanja, for doing it, but I am curious about what Enrique thinks about
That's
that.
okay. I was gonna have him later, but we can pop him in now.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Al, and everybody for sharing your insights. But I think everybody's pretty, concerned for many reasons, right? And I need to talk about AI, but number one, the AI revolution is not happening at the same speed everywhere. There are countries that are significantly far behind, and there are countries that are significantly far ahead. And this is going to create a massive technological inequality problem as we go forward, because some companies are really going to win and win big, and some companies and countries will lose and will lose big time as well. And we got to take that into account, right? Because you got countries where we have traditionally outsourced technological services, India, Bangladesh, before the war in Ukraine, Eastern European countries. And that's all going to change, in the next few months, not even years, but in the next few months because of AI. So we got to take that into account. The second thing is that same sort of inequality will happen within workplaces. I'm optimistic, but I'm not lying to myself when we say, oh, I say it all the time, by the way, AI will not take your job if you take advantage of AI, but it will. Because if you are a business owner and even if it's, marginal extra productivity, but it's still marginal extra productivity that is going to save you significant amount of cost on people, on talent, at the end of the day, many decisions are not made on a human-based level. They are made on a profit-based level. And that means that if you can save even if you increase your productivity by 5-10%, which is already quite a a whole, right? If you just do it, if you do that while decreasing costs, and decreasing cost means laying people off, because now you're doing some of that with AI, you are going to do it. I mean, yes, I would love to think that some companies will not do that, but you see big companies like Microsoft and Apple and Amazon, like putting a hold on their hiring, until they figure out how AI will impact every single job. So we have to, I think the trend for us in HR is to be able to give people the opportunity to quickly catch up as fast as they can, to create a real sense of urgency that this is not like any technology. It's not bringing like an HRIS system. It's not bringing a people analytics system. This is like the real deal. And I think we have to create a sense of urgency of, you have to get ready for this with the resources that this company can offer you, but with the resources that you on your own will have to build out there so that you remain employable, because nothing is guaranteed in this new world of work anymore, right? So number one, it is the inequality of how the AI revolution is happening globally. Number two, it is the inequality of how it will happen internally in workplaces. And the opportunity that I think this creates for HR is, um, you know, uh, uh, providing, number one, creating that sense of urgency for ourselves in HR, but also for the community of our employees. And number two, trying to help people catch up as quickly as possible. So I think I'm optimistic, but we have to be very, very realistic about this, right? That even with marginal productivity gains, the flip side of that is that there will be significant cost saving. When you say one AI tool can do what you were saying before, Al, like going to Upwork, right? I was using, I don't know if you know this platform, Opus Clip. I used it like 5 or 6 months ago, and I was like, oh, this is okay. And my credit card was charged yesterday for the subscription, and I had completely forgotten about it. I went yesterday to the platform again, and I'm like, holy smokes, this thing has significantly changed for the better in the past 5 months. So if I used to use 5 video editors to create all the videos for my company, I need just one. And I'm going to tell the person, here's the best version of Opus Clip, use it, and you will have the same output that the 5 video editors that we had before. So those 4 people that we had on Upwork that we were hiring from, I don't know, Ukraine or, whatever it was, that's not going to happen anymore. So there's optimism, but also we need to catch up very, very fast.
Oh, thank you guys for saying that, because I do. I mean, I think
I
it's
brought
real.
the whole
I
thing
think
down,
it's
by the way, the whole energy down.
no,
I took
you're
off my
well.
holiday hat.
I'm gonna give you a good question, a good like only positive for the next one. No, but I think that's why these discussions are important, because all of us want to be optimistic, but to get the best out of something, we have to be realistic.
Yeah.
Like we have to be prepared. We have to understand. Like I've said this probably like a million times. I remember when I was, I don't know how old, and the new iPhone came out and they put a camera on it. I'm like, why would I need a camera on my phone? I have a camera. Don't have that camera anymore, but like my first idea, and I don't know how like the camera film, like all the industry is doing, because now so many smartphones or like all mobile devices have it. So it's like you have to go in eyes wide open. You can't be, I think it's different to be optimistic and naive. Like you can't be naive about it. You can't be naive that like only good things are going to happen and they're going to come to me. Like I won't even have to worry. Like it's just going to be this big wave of, rainbows and unicorns. But Enrique, I'll give you a super positive one as the next one. So what when we're looking at 2025, how can HR inspire a more agile and resilient workforce? So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think for all of us to be successful, we're also going to need to figure out how to be agile and resilient. So it does go a little bit with the AI movement.
Yeah. I would say among the many things that can be done, I want to go back to one that Dan said before, which to me is the one thing that HR can, among the many things, the one thing that HR can do to help build resilient workplaces. And that's helping create connections, meaningful connections in the workplace, not just me knowing what you do as a coworker. And I think we will need more of each other, not just in terms of collaboration, but in terms of support, community, and even friendships. I mean, we're talking about AI, but we have AI, and AI is becoming the most mainstream topic that everybody's talking about. but you have a crisis of mental health, you have a crisis of loneliness, in societies, not just in America, but across the board, the horrendous crisis of mental health with teenagers that are now teenagers but are entering into the workforce in the next 2 to 5 years. So we need to solve for that, right? Because AI will not solve for that. AI will help us amplify the good things that we do, but it won't solve those problems on its own. So we need to create workplaces and a society in general, where we can create better connections for people to, or create better opportunities, I'm sorry, for people to connect with each other and to solve these many challenges that we're dealing with in terms of mental health and isolation and whatnot, right? And I think for HR to be able to create a culture, to architect a culture, to bring senior leaders on board, to build that culture of connection and meaningful relationships, that alone will make a massive change in our societies and in the workplace. So my one call for HR is you got to focus on this. You have to work, you have to be concerned not just about the impact of AI, but you have to be concerned about whether at the end of the day you remain with the same amount of employees. These mental health challenges that we're dealing with will still be there. AI will not resolve for that. We have to be very intentional about this. So that is my one call to action for HR to build more resilient workplaces.
Thank you. And Dan, I was going to go to you next with that question. I don't know if you want to bring something else or if you want to elaborate on Enrique's comment that was elaborating on yours on connection.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I think this is such an important question, and we talk about agility, and I guess I'll just say a couple of things. I would echo everything that Enrique just said. I think agility. And I want to be clear about one thing. Agility isn't just about speed. I think we too often associate agility as moving fast. It's actually about the opportunity and the ability to be adaptable and knowing how to pivot and shift and also stay steady, right, in the face of chaos. That is the best of agility, and I think HR really needs to focus this. And so when we think about being resilient, again, it isn't about being tough, right? That's also, I think, a misconception. It's actually learning how to recover, and it's learning how to grow, and it's learning how to come back stronger. We have to create that sort of mindset in any organization, or you're not resilient, right? Being resilient isn't being oblivious and saying, well, I don't, I'm just tough, I'm going to plow through it. It's about actually falling and learning how to recover and grow and come back stronger. That is resiliency. So HR has to focus on that. And to do that, you have to build a culture, and we know this, where everybody has an opportunity, and through connection and obviously getting to know each other and constantly learning, growing, being ready for what's next. And I think I would just, my two asks and for any organization out there is try to redesign roles too that are not just around positions, but around projects. And I think that really helps just from building a resilient workforce here, because you're really thinking about more project-based team connection. And with that said, build community, not just teams, right? The more community you have, the more connection you have, that builds strength. Strength comes from the power of many, and the power of many comes from community, and that creates a movement, and that allows you to stay strong and move forward. So that would be my add to that.
I love that sense of communities in addition to teams, because a lot of what we see organizations looking at are team dynamics. And one thing that I love that I look at in employee experience surveys is that a lot of times that's their team is what people really enjoy inside their organization, but that they're not always as happy about the exposure or connections they have with people outside of their team, but they're happy with their team. So they're happy with those that they get to interact with. They just wish they were interacting with more people. So how can organizations do that even more effectively? And there are different resource groups and organizations try to do that, but I think there is a big opportunity to do that better and definitely create that better sense of community. So next, we'll kind of stay along those lines, but I'll go to Mine and talk about one of my personal favorite topics, which is well-being. So, Mina, what can HR do to create a workplace experience that can really support well-being? So, we're talking a lot about technologies, but we're talking a lot about relationships and resilience and communities. I know you have a huge passion and expertise on well-being. What would you love to see organizations maybe do more or better of in going into the next year?
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on what Enrique and Dan said about the community and connection part, because that's really key in the organization. When we are strategizing the well-being component in a company, we like to look at it from 5 pillars. So the companies are really good at creating those happy hours or like virtual games, that creating that community, the fun part, but they usually overlook the psychological safety to start with. So that's has to be the fundamental. So there has to be psychological safety so that people know that nothing's going to happen to them if they are freely expressing themselves, because it starts with self-expression and the freedom to self-express, so that they know that they can speak freely, they can just, oppose some ideas, that they can thrive in that setting. So that's really important. And so that one pillar is protection from harm, as we say, and that also includes the physical harm. So we need to make sure that there is both physical well-being and the mental well-being in the company, starting with the activities that we try to do. And the second one's, again, connection and community, building those communities and the ERGs, so that everyone's well represented and we are listening to the minorities in the company too. And that self of connection and values. I mean, the values are really strong. And sometimes we just think them as something on the employee handbook, but it has to go beyond that. It has to be in the behavior, and it's like a glue. The culture is like a glue. So we have to just look at them and just play that the role, have the values play that role. Another one is the opportunity for growth. And because people love when they have that sense of growth, when the company is providing that, so that they have that opportunity, that they have extra, resources to learn more, to engage with their role. I was delivering a keynote, and in that I was talking about the seeking system of the brain. I mean, the first thing that people lose in a company is their seeking system, because there are rules, policies, and everything, so they don't let people to do things the way that they like to do. Because they say that, no, this is the rule, this is how we do things here. I mean, as much as we like the policies and the frameworks, we should let people to be free within those frameworks, so that they can have that sense of growth. They can just put their creativity into things, have some autonomy. And so that's another thing that's really important. And the one thing that I also love having at a company is the work-life harmony, as I like to call it. So it's not like a work-life balance, because if we say balance, we are talking about two opposing things, trying to putting that effort. Like balance is like effort, but if we say harmony, even the feeling, the embodiment of that word is just making everything more nice and with a rhythm. So having that, the work as part of the life, and having that harmony, letting people to harmonize that is really important. Letting them to just have their own rhythm, going with their own life design. So letting them just be it. And the last thing, which is I think one of the most important thing, is the mattering at work, to just create that higher purpose for each person, to be aligned with their purpose. And just it's not only the social cause thing that we create, but it's that they're passionate about. We're doing something at a higher level. It's not like a task, all those task lists to be done, but just feeling fulfilled, because they are just serving to a better cause, or a better thing, like a bigger picture to give them that sense. So if you combine these all, it's just like a perfect recipe. Of course, not we cannot just like do them at the same time. But I would really like to give this message that is not only about the happy work, the happy hours, the picnics, the offsites, but it's like a combination of all.
Yeah, it's deeper. And thank you. I think those were such meaningful examples and such specific examples for what organizations can do. And you're right, it's not necessarily a perfect recipe, but to think about the different components, I think is really critical. And I think organizations, I think it's so important to not take our eye off of well-being. I think it's everything. It's the foundation of who we are and what we can do and how we can advance as humans and advance businesses. That it was something that became so big a few years ago where it got so much more attention. To me, I think it's important, again, for a group like ours to continue to talk about it, to make sure that leadership and organizations continue to hold it in high regard as something that's important. Al, I wanted to ask you the same thing. I know you and I talk about
Yeah.
well-being a lot and capacity and a lot of different things. So what would you add to what Mina just shared?
Yeah, and Richard, I want to kick this over to you if I may in a second. So, yeah, Mina, thank you for sharing as you did, and I really appreciate what you shared in many contexts. And so let me just say this. I see a lot of anxiety, and there's data that supports this in the workplace. Am I going to have a job in 6 months? You know, the data that when I was coming up as a professional, you're going to have, I think it was 6 jobs in the course of your career. Last I saw, it was going to be like 17 jobs. It could be with the same company, but you know, the number of companies people are going to be with is going to be more. So I know even in the greater San Francisco Bay Area, in tech, there's been a lot of layoffs. People aren't buying homes because they don't know whether or not they have a job. So, you know, talk about well-being. I think that another part of it is, can we instill confidence in our workforce that they're going to have a job in the future? And that takes communication, that takes conscious workforce planning, that takes really understanding where the vulnerabilities are so people can focus on their work and grow and develop on behalf of the organization, on behalf of their teams. So that's where, going to Richard, you know, this integrated approach, it's not just learning and skill development, it's not just performance, it's not just recruiting, it is taking a systematic view of how we're going to formulate, measure, and manage talent strategy. And we need good data to do that. So Richard, I just want to bring you into the conversation and seeing what you're seeing, you know, in the new year in terms of how the insight that you're generating there at One Model is actually going to be used to help take a more systematic approach. So a little bit of a leading question there, but I just am really curious about your thoughts.
It's funny, Alan. I might even dodge the lead a little bit because I really love what Mine was saying about the skills that are required and like how we can really build that way as an HR profession towards that view of the world. So one of the things I really think a lot about is actually sense making. So that idea of not just how do we interpret and analyze, like you have to get the data to the table, and the data absolutely needs to be a voice there. But it's always people analytics. It's not just analytics. We've got to make sure we're bringing that HR side of it with us and that HR theory and backing. And what we really bring to the table is that ability to bring that human sense across the business, all those things that make us human at the workplace, blend that with that data that we have and we have access to today now, and make sense of that for the organization. And so I think that as a skill, that's not a word we use enough. And it's a phenomenal book by Christian Madsberg called Sense Making, which just about every year I go back and read it again. Whenever I start getting a little too high and mighty about analytics is going to fix everything, I try to read that book to bring me back down to earth. But it's one that I think that's definitely something that HR needs. And funny enough, I think the other one I would say for this and in general, if we're trying to approach like well-being, I actually think it's sales training. I think HR could use a really healthy dose of sales training because ultimately every job becomes a sales job. No matter what it is, just the higher up you go within any organization, you end up having to do a lot more influence and change and acceptance and getting people on board. And I think one of the things we've done really well is we've articulated the arguments. We've got the data, we've got the research. It's time to sell that and sell it not in a way to force it down somebody's throat, but to get them to want to buy too. And so I think it's an under leveraged skill that we could really invest a little bit more in across the HR world. And I think we'd see a much bigger return than sometimes doubling down on some of our strengths is if we invest in sales, that actually might be a good path to get to stronger well-being in the long run.
Yeah. I love that you say that. And one of the things we usually talk about that's similar to that is like the ability to communicate or even self-promote for HR,
Yeah.
because HR does so many amazing things. And recently I was talking with somebody about their employee experience surveys, and they said, I'm not even sure, they were not in HR. And they said, we get them, but I'm not really sure what our organization does. And I thought they have such a better opportunity to shout it off the rooftops, because all of us on this call know, and probably everyone joining us, how much work there is on the back end. But we're some of the worst group of people to really give ourselves credit and to build ourselves up and to say, hey, this is what we've done. And so I love that you position it as sales, because I do think that there is such a huge and strong parallel. And I think that's been like done like almost never. So it's just a big opportunity. It's not something to like, oh, let's fine tune it, or, let's continue to advance on it. It's like, let's start it. And a lot of times when you start something, like you can see the biggest gains, because when you're fine tuning, you can still win and make a difference.
Spot
But when
on.
you're starting with something, you haven't. And so Al, for the second time, you went to the person I was going to go to anyway. So
I,
I'll work with Richard to
Guilty.
ask him. I know, I know.
just
Al
want
can't help himself.
Actually, may I make a quick comment on that? Because I would
Yeah.
amplify sales, but I also say communications, change management. We have to compete for mind share. And we've been really shy about that. We need to have not only the confidence, but we have to understand that our internal customers, whether it be executives, managers, employees, they're getting pelted with information all the time. So we could have the big aha, we could have the best piece of insight on the planet. Yet if we don't compete for that mind share in a persistent way, not only in a very compelling way as a one-off event, but an ongoing way, then we're going to lose. And particularly with AI and all the information dissemination that's happening. So I will zip it and kick it back to you, Sanja. Thank you.
I think
I just
Enrique was trying to jump in.
just
Get
wanted
in.
to say one more thing, and I'm going to guess that what Al means by mindshare also means competing for money. And I'm sorry to put it that way, but company resources are limited, and we in HR lose the battle to the people who know how to sell and how to influence, and we gotta fight for it. We have to fight for that money because we are not a cost center. We create better organizations that are more successful. Therefore, we either save money or make more money. So we got to fight for that. But my comment was going to be related to Richard's comment before, which to me, to be able to focus on all the things that we're talking about in here, at some point, we're going to have to turn over the page of talking about stupid stuff like where do we work from? And I am so like taken aback by the fact that it's been 4 years working from home and we're still talking about it. First of all, we're talking about where we're more productive when the data is out there already, and we know that it varies a lot. It's not a cookie cutter kind of thing. But as long as we keep talking about the same silly, borderline, stupid stuff, I would generally use another word to describe this, but I think we are, R-rated here, so I want to be mindful about that. So as long as we are focusing on things that don't add any value to people or organizations, we won't be able to use that limited amount of time that we have to talk about the things that Mine talked about before, Richard talked about, Dan talked about. So at some point, we're going to have to tell our business leaders, stop talking about where we work from, and let's focus on creating a really productive environment, because you didn't want to have this conversation before we were working remotely. Let's have it now, but for real though, so that to me is part of the evolution of HR and having serious conversations about how to build successful workplaces. So Richard triggered me to say all these things. So thank you, Richard.
I love it. I love the passion, and I love challenging the status quo. I think that's what we need, right? Like it's not like continuing to iterate, it's these big, bold changes and bold moves. And so for one last question, and I'll open it up, I'll start to go around is what is your biggest hope for the future of AI or you AI? Oh my goodness, HR, not AI.
What a way to end it.
Yeah, Richard, why don't we start with you?
Sure. And I'll keep building on Enrique. We're on the same wavelength today. So my biggest hope for HR in 2025 relates to my favorite Christmas song, which is Pearl Bailey's 5-Pound Box of Money. I hope that HR gets the investment it deserves in 2025. Our problems are people problems, our problems that we're facing as a business, the headway we have. It's about the talent. It's about getting things organized from an organization we cannot be competitive in 2025 without the right talent. And we can't get the right talent unless we have the right insights, the right data, the right things we need. And we can't keep getting by on a shoestring. We've got to get the investment. We're part of the business. We're just as important as finance, marketing, you name it. They have the investment. It's our time. And so I really think that the hope comes down to you and HR who are trying to do big things, that you get the investment you're looking for.
Thank you. Ian, what about you? What are your hopes for HR going into 2025?
Yeah, I would plus one that, and I would also say my hope is that HR continues to seek to expand its scope, jurisdiction, and influence beyond the traditional boundaries of HR processes and transactions. Not to say they aren't important. We need to get the right people, pay them the right way. Enrique, unfortunately, know where we're placing them and why. But there's so much data, and I live in the data space. So I think if anyone has a good data point on this, tell me. But my hypothesis is that HR and people analytics in HR has much less than 50%. I would venture to say like a third of the work related data that it needs to help the business understand how leaders and teams and people impact outcomes. And if we don't challenge ourselves to seek to better understand that and draw a quantifiable line of sight to business impacts, which is definitely going to be outside of the HR boundary, we will continue to have these conversations about how we can and should be playing bigger. And I think we have to kind of play offense on that and build bridges and use data and tech to do that while keeping it human. So my hope is that we play bigger than the org chart has traditionally suggested that we should.
Well, and thank you. I think to both you and Richard, and I'll let others jump in. But I think for those of you who joined us and who are listening in and part of this conversation, this is why we brought this group together, because a lot of times these conversations are not easy and they're not always natural. And maybe some of you have never had them before, but everybody on this fireside chat has. And that's the reason why we invited them to this conversation, because I've been in those conversations with them. I've seen them talk. I've heard how they present things that resonate to the people they need these resources from, or they need the movement from. So I'm not wrapping up yet. I'm going to let a couple more of our friends go in with their hopes, but I was just going to say, do reach out if you're listening to this panel and if this is resonating with you, and if you do want to make these big, bold moves. Everybody's here because they want to help as a community and they know how to do it. So with that, Dan, your hopes for 2025.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll try to keep it to a minute. This has been just love being with all of you, and thank you everybody for joining. This is such an important conversation, and we have work to do. I have a lot of hopes for, and I have confidence in HR. HR has always been cool, I think. I think now we just need to live it and be as cool as we possibly can be. And I think you're talking about being more focused on sales. I kind of think about HR becoming the chief storytelling office, right? If you can't explain the purpose and the meaning of why you do what you do, the war for talent and attracting talent is going to be challenging. So you have to be grounded in mission. You have to be grounded in purpose, right? That's your oxygen. And if you start to get that right, then you're going to build that connection. You're going to build that community with people. I mean, we've said this for years and years and years, right? Moving away from the transactional to the strategic. But, I really hope that HR does take more of a lead and ownership and truly being the chief storyteller internally, and that can bleed into external as well. And purpose is and can be an anchor during turbulent times. So the more you can sort of rally around that's like the kitchen during a party, right? Like that's where you go, you lean up against the counter, like, yeah, this is why we do what we do. And this feels good. And you can manage through turbulent times more effectively. So that would be my hope.
I love that. Love the kitchen at a party. Enrique, what about you? What are your hopes?
I have the hope for HR to lead the way. I want to go back to what Ian said before. We are business leaders with a people hat. We solve complex business challenges with people solutions, and that puts us in a unique place, which is we can see how businesses are operating, and we can bring people to the table to complete the whole equation and bring it all together, right? So that we are in a unique position to be able to do this, and that I think creates a great opportunity for us to be the leaders and the trailblazers. So that's my hope, that HR becomes a trailblazer.
Thank you. Mine, on to you, and Al, we'll wrap up with you next.
So my hope is that HR not only gets the financial support, but also the emotional support. Because like everyone, I really hate seeing HR as being the complaint point of complaints. And people just like, keep complaining, keep asking. I mean, they usually forget that HR is an employee too. So they are also struggling and they have a lot to deliver. So when I'm doing a project, I like to keep it as a project team, but not HR, because like I hate to put all the pressure and all the responsibility on the shoulders of HR. So for this year, I really like to get that support from leadership, from all the teams, from like anyone in the company, and let HR be the responsibility for everyone, not only the HR departments.
Thank you, Mina. And Al, I'm looking to all your positivity and optimism to bring us home.
All right, so yeah,
What are
so
your
real
hopes?
quick, my hope first and foremost is not for HR. My hope is for people, for human beings, and I hope they step into this new world of disruption and embrace AI. They stay connected and learn at pace, because they're going to have to take agency to potentially shift jobs both within their organizations and out, and leaders being more open-minded to the information that HR is presenting. So I'm tired of hearing HR trying to get a seat at the table. Own the damn table, invite people into it, take charge, because you have visibility into how not only people are thinking and feeling, but how work is going to get done in the future. So that's my hope for HR, and it's been a long hope. And now we have the ability to do it in an uncommon way with AI. So let's not only set the table, let's invite people to it and make some great things happen. So that's my hope for the new year.
Al, I hope HR never says that phrase ever again. Like
100%.
anyone who knows me, like, don't say that phrase. It totally
Drives me
takes you out of the conversation. So thank you for bringing it up.
nuts. Hey, Sanja, thank you. Appreciate you all.
Thank
Well,
you.
Sanja,
Thank you,
what is your hope?
everybody.
Do you have
Thanks
a hope,
again,
Sanja?
everybody. Yes,
Oh,
Sonny, I do.
I
Mic
no,
drop, mic drop for you.
I know. No, my hope is there's so many beautiful things and important things that we want to do. And I think everything that all of you said is really going in bold and confident and knowing that what we're doing is really good and talking about it with all the pride that we should have and keeping all the business related things and then all the things that people have considered soft, like well-being and resilient, like we've got to have that as a foundation. So to me, the hope is that we find a balance for all of those things to coexist and talk about it really loud and shout it off the rooftop. So a little bit kind of an aggregation of what all you're talking about, but I think we have so many critical components of an amazing recipe. We need to bring it together in the most effective way next year. That's what my hope is. Thank you for asking.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said.
right.
Thank you so much. This is like the funnest group of people, the smartest. I think I'm just so grateful for all of you to have as friends, and to have shared this time. And for all of you that joined us, thank you so much. I know it's such a busy time of year. I hope you all got something away from this conversation and some motivation and hopefully a little bit more, touch of optimism and ideas for next year. And again, please feel free to connect with everybody on this panel. we are a community. That's one thing that I can continue to say is we're here for each other. And I get goosebumps when I talk about this. These people on this call are people that have shown up for me personally and continue to show up. And that's why I wanted to bring them together, because I know they would show up for you as well. So when you're going into 2025, when you want to do big, bold things, remember these spaces and reach out to us, because we'll absolutely be there for you. And I think the only way that we're going to be all together at this time next year, maybe reflecting on 2025 and talking about the amazing things that we accomplished, is if we do it together. So thank you, everybody on the fireside chat. Thank you, everybody who joined us. Happy holidays, happy new year, and can't wait to see all the amazing things everyone here accomplishes in 2025.